What's up, everyone? Welcome back. It's Peter Tragos, the lawyer you know, and we are here for another Friday afternoon live. In today's show, we're going to be talking together about the Prince Andrew case that a lot of people thought might go away with his most recent motion to dismiss. We're going to talk through the judge's order. We're going to talk through who the judge is a little bit, which I always find interesting. And then this is literally what I do, or is these types of cases. So to talk about it's really fun. And I'll tell you about which of these arguments that his lawyers filed in this motion to dismiss are filed basically in every motion to dismiss. And the lawyers don't even expect that it's going to get granted on some of the grounds that he asked for. But there was one major opportunity that he had, at least in my estimation, that he could potentially get this case dismissed. So we are going to talk together through that motion to dismiss, the judge's order, and cat's out of the bag. And spoiler alert, the judge denied Prince Andrew's motions to dismiss. And so Virginia Roberts gets to continue her prosecution of him civilly and gets to continue to go after him for money damages and make him pay basically for what he did to her, in addition to Jeffrey Epstein and everybody else that was involved in that process. We will also talk a little bit about the Balwani trial. I'll just let you know now, it looks like that has moved to March 9th, and Pete is going to be doing cases. I'm going to be doing videos updating on that trial and that case. So if you have questions about that, we can talk about it. And then I'm also going to talk a little bit about, at least answer some questions if you guys have any, about Drake and the Tabasco fiasco. We'll talk about that a little bit. We can also talk about Baldwin and what's going on with that case. And then we can talk about the Oxford school shooting. So we will be able to talk about a lot of different cases in this. As always, get your questions in. But the bulk of it and kind of the beginning of the video, as people are getting on, I'm going to talk a little bit through this motion dismiss filed by Prince Andrew. We've gotten a lot of questions on it. A lot of videos have been circling around the internet on it. So I want to talk a little bit about what this motion dismiss looked like and why the judge denied it and what it means for Virginia's case kind of continuing forward. So Prince Andrew asked for this case to be dismissed with prejudice for a couple of reasons. The first is he said that the complaint did not state a legally sufficient claim. This is one of those that defendants file all the time in their motions to dismiss. And basically what this means is that in the four corners of the complaint, the piece of paper itself, that if everything in it is true, there would be no claim and no cause of action that the plaintiff could win on. That means either we as the plaintiff, and I say we meaning I'm usually the plaintiff, not saying Virginia or that I represent Virginia, but for example, that just means we either didn't put all the elements in that are necessary, duty, breach, causation, damages. We didn't put facts in that could prove those elements, or we didn't mention what the damages are. And when we mention damages, people think of, I'm going to ask for $5 million at trial. Really, all you need to put in for damages is that she did suffer emotional distress. She did suffer physical injuries. She did have to seek treatment for those injuries. They did affect her life one way or the other. You just explain what the damages are. You don't necessarily have to give a damage amount or explain what medical procedure she had or what her medical bills are or anything like that. And that's something that a lot of defendants, in my estimation, confuse it with a motion for summary judgment. They try to argue that there's not enough evidence here to prove this claim. There's no way she can win this claim. Therefore, judge, you should dismiss it. The judge in this case, who is Judge Kaplan, and we'll get to that in a second, said that that is not what this is for. I'm reading these facts as if they're true, and that doesn't mean that this judge believes Virginia Roberts in this case. What it means is how you look at a motion to dismiss for this reason is that you look at it in a light most favorable to the non-moving party, which is just a confusing way of saying you give the benefit of the doubt to the other person. If you're asking for a motion to dismiss, I'm going to give them, the other person, the benefit of the doubt as I read these facts and assume that they're true. And if they are true, can they prove a claim? Can they prove a cause of action? The judge doing that analysis came to the result that not going to dismiss for failure to state a legally sufficient cause of action. And again, if this was a motion for summary judgment, then the defendant could produce affidavits and the defendant could argue facts and could say, oh, this is wrong for this reason, or she's going to lose for this reason, or no reasonable jury could find in favor of Virginia Roberts because of these facts that we're providing to the court, because of the facts that are on record in this case. But that is not the place for a motion to dismiss. Another thing that Prince Andrew was asking for was a more definite statement, basically saying that Virginia Roberts and her lawyers did not provide us enough to be able to explain what our defense is. We don't know how to set up our defense. We don't even know what we're doing in this case because she doesn't provide enough information. And I'll give you an example of what would be a successful swing at that argument. And that would be if somebody filed a complaint against you and they said, intentional infliction of emotional distress. You caused me emotional distress. And that's it. That's the complaint. That you, Bob Hope, since I see you commenting in here, you, Bob Hope, caused me, Peter Tragos, emotional distress. And that's the entire complaint. And I filed that complaint. Well, Bob Hope, there's no way for you to know in what way I mean you caused me emotional distress. I didn't say what the facts were. I didn't say what you did. I didn't say when you did. I didn't say how you did. I didn't say what my emotional distress was. So you have no way of even defending yourself. You have to say, what do you mean? I have to know, did I do something? Was it in business? Was it in personal life? Did I do something to you? Did I do something to somebody around you? I have to give you those facts so that you know what's coming at you as a civil defendant. Prince Andrew said that Virginia did not do that. The judge said, yes, she did. She clearly said that it's stemming from all the facts with Jeffrey Epstein and what you did to her. And Prince Andrew also argued that the intentional infliction of emotional distress was duplicative to the battery claim because they both had to do with the sexual battery and the trafficking and what he did to her there. So you can't file two separate civil causes of action for the same set of facts. And the judge said, no, actually, not only did this complaint give enough of an indication as to what the cause of actions were, and they did give you a definite enough statement, but the intentional infliction of emotional distress, she also says that you did more than just the sexual abuse. You also made her witness abuse to other victims. You also made her be involved with these other abusers and be in the same room and deal with all of this other stuff that was horrible and that caused her emotional distress. That was in addition to the battery that you did to her, okay? And those actions are above and beyond. So the judge denied the duplicative claim. He denied the request for a more definite statement. That was all just flatly denied by the judge, saying that, and again, at this point, it's really important, and in the order, the judge kept saying, at this point, the way I read this complaint is if Virginia Roberts said it happened, then it did happen. So if Virginia Roberts said you sexually abused her, you did at this point when I'm reading it for a motion to dismiss. It does not mean that's what the outcome of the case is going to be. It does not mean that's what a jury is going to decide. It just means at this juncture, while the court is reading these documents, that's how he reads the complaint. The next one was the constitutionality, or actually that it's unconstitutional, the New York Child Victims Act, the revival of those claims that provided, I believe, a 2-year period of time where these victims that may have missed the statute of limitations for one reason or the other, including Corona, it provides them the opportunity to file complaints. Prince Andrew says that that's unconstitutional. And the court basically said, listen, you're not the first to make this argument. You're not going to be the last. Every state and federal court has dismissed and denied claims like this. This is not reason for a dismissal. They have all found that it is constitutional. They have all found that it does not violate your constitutional rights. So I am finding in line with them. And I'm not going to change precedent here. I'm falling in line with all the other state and federal courts, which that makes a judge feel really comfortable when they can say, listen, I'm doing what everybody else is doing. So I'm pretty comfortable in my answer that this New York Child Victims Act is not unconstitutional. Okay, so those are all the reasons that the judge kind of swatted away. But this judge was appointed by Bill Clinton, Slick Willie. Okay, and if he was appointed by Donald Trump, I would say the same thing, because those are two of the many political names we've seen associated with Jeffrey Epstein. And if shots are going to be taken at royalty, literal royalty like Prince Andrew, then maybe there's an indication that nobody's safe. And if you have political ties to the Clintons, then maybe you wouldn't want to be so harsh on these defendants. Well, that does not seem to be the case, at least to this point, for Judge Kaplan, because he denied all of Prince Andrew's requests, especially the last one, which could include people like Clinton. I'm not saying Clinton did anything. I'm not saying Trump did anything. I'm not saying any of these other people did anything with Jeffrey Epstein. I'm just saying they, if they were sued, I would be willing to bet, would make the same argument as this final argument made by Prince Andrew. And that is the 2009 settlement agreement between Virginia and Jeffrey Epstein, and that settlement agreement that includes potential other defendants in this claim, my guess is they would all argue that they would be potential defendants in those claims. And this order was like 46 pages, and 20-something pages dealt with this. Yes, expat. Yes, we're going to get there. I have that kind of at the end of what's going on with Prince Andrew at this point, but we will talk about that. So this settlement agreement, and I could put it up on the screen. If you guys want to see it, let me know and I'll share it to the screen. I don't know if you guys like looking at the documents or not, but this settlement agreement is interesting. And the court goes through an analysis. What were the parties trying to do with this settlement agreement? And the court is right when it analyzes, as somebody who's been a part of a lot of settlement agreements, the court analyzes that Virginia Roberts is trying to get as much money and be able to make as many people pay for what they did to her as possible. She is trying to get repaid and get justice for what happened to her at the hands of these people. And Jeffrey Epstein is trying to muzzle her as much as possible, not let her go after anybody else, and pay as little as possible. That is how settlement agreements work. The defendant sometimes will pay more money for more silence, or the victims potentially will take less money for less silence, and they'll be able to go after other people. So the court talks a lot about the vague language of the settlement agreement. And the major part that is vague is other potential defendants. Okay? And when you talk about language that's vague, the court many times cannot make a determination as to what the parties meant. So the court basically in this case comes down to the fact that I, as a judge, am not going to decide what the parties meant. I, as a judge, am not going to decide that Prince Andrew was part of this class. And I talked in another video about how embarrassing it would be to even mention or argue that you are part of this class, but it seems like that was the strategy for Prince Andrew. And I actually thought it was a good strategy. I thought this was his best chance to get this complaint dismissed, in this case dismissed, but the judge didn't agree because the judge did not feel that the release was clear enough to include people like Prince Andrew. So because it was vague, the judge at this point is not, and he says it over and over again, I'm not making the determination that Prince Andrew's not in this class. I'm not making the determination about what this release is or what this release is releasing. All I'm saying at this point is I'm not dismissing this complaint based on this release. So to me, that's very, very interesting and could set a precedent in other sexual abuse cases that reference other defendants in at least this jurisdiction. There was a couple notes that I found in here, which I thought was funny. Where the Prince Andrew's lawyers were arguing that the battery and the IED, the intentional infliction of emotional distress, were the same and therefore had to dismiss one. They used language like, well-established New York laws say this. And then the judge literally says, every court has already rejected this, or every court says this, or thank you, but your argument, while it is creative is without merit. That's how the judge responds to it, which is how you can understand that the judge ain't buying it. Even if you say things like well-established New York law, and lawyers say that to make judges second guess themselves and say, well, do I want to go against well-established New York law? Because no judge wants to go against that. And okay, so since this was dismissed, or since this was denied, the dismissal was denied for Prince Andrew. He literally was saying, I belong in that class of defendants, and therefore this case should be dismissed. So since that, and since it wasn't dismissed, the Queen has announced that she has stripped Andrew of his honorary military titles, LOL. If we have any military guys or gals in here, I want to know how you feel about honorary military titles for royalty like Prince Andrew, and his royal patronages. A press release reads that he stepped down with the Queen's agreement and approval, which means basically it's one of those you didn't get fired, you quit kind of deals. He is going to have no public duties for the foreseeable future. He apologizes for his association with Epstein and says, I never saw anything or never knew that any of these problems were happening, just like he denied dancing with and knowing Virginia before that picture was produced with his arm around her. And he said, it was a bad look to hang out with Epstein after his release from prison in 2010. So things are not looking good right now for Prince Andrew. The royal family is backing off from him, which means their protection is backing off from him, and he is getting exposed at this point. And I think Virginia Roberts and her lawyers are probably smelling blood, and my guess is she wants to go forward with this. So we will see exactly what happens from here on out, because a motion to dismiss, don't get it twisted here, okay? So this is really important, and we're talking about this, and I'm talking about how it's not surprising that most of these arguments were brushed off by the judge, denied for most of these reasons. But this settlement agreement, I think, is going to come up again in the future. I think it's going to be a main point of contention in Virginia Roberts' deposition. I think they're going to have a ton of inconsistencies to go through when Virginia Roberts gets deposed. I'm interested in seeing how Prince Andrew does in his deposition and what they bring to his deposition, and what they argue is, classified or top secret or stuff he can't talk about as a member of the royal family. But I still think just because he lost this motion to dismiss does not mean he's going to lose the case. So don't get too far ahead of ourselves, okay? So this is just the first hurdle that Virginia Roberts and her lawyers have overcome. It does not mean they've won. It does not mean there's going to be a huge verdict, because there could also be potential set-offs. Did any of the money she got from Jeffrey Epstein, if that applies to what she's arguing against Prince Andrew's lawyers, even if he goes and loses, could ask for all or part of the Jeffrey Epstein settlement to get set off against what he gets. So he still has some opportunities to make some arguments, to poke holes in Virginia Roberts' story, to make her look less credible or prove she isn't credible, depending on how you feel about her testimony. So there are still some interesting things that could happen with this case. It's far from over, but there was the potential for it to be over in favor of Prince Andrew here, and it was not. So we continue forward with the Prince Andrew case. I already mentioned Balwani. There are more actors that have, commented on Alec Baldwin. I talked about Nick Cage. I know George Clooney has, and a couple other actors have talked about it. If you guys are interested in that with Baldwin, let me know. I can do more reaction videos. If you send me interviews or tag me in interviews, I'll take a look at them and react. You guys seem to enjoy when I react to interviews. I think it's fun. It's easy content for me because I'm literally just picking it apart as if I'm in a deposition. If I'm cross-examining a witness, I was just prepping for a depo of a doctor I'm deposing in a couple of weeks, and it's so fun to go through the reports and say, oh, really? Is that what you said this record says? And just find little things to nitpick and talk to them about where it's just wrong, or they read it wrong, or they're making an argument that doesn't make sense. So if you guys enjoy that, let me know, and I can do more of that on Baldwin. We talked about the Oxford shooters. I know his arraignment happened, and he pled not guilty. Crumbly. So most of you know, if you follow this channel, I'm sure you follow a ton of other legal channels. Just because you plead not guilty does not mean you are going to take the stand and say you didn't do it. Because a lot of people say, how is it possible he pleads not guilty? He's obviously guilty. He's going to admit it. Well, a lot of times you plead not guilty because it sets certain rights into place that you get as a criminal defendant. Number one. Number two, it leaves the opportunity open for some affirmative defenses like not guilty by reason of insanity, where you admit the actions but not the reasons behind them. So there's still a lot of legal things in play at this point. Most defendants do not plead guilty at the beginning. Some do, and some get a lighter sentence because of it, because some judges like that. So, that might be why some people plead guilty. But at this point, he's pleading not guilty to the charges, but he does know the charges against him. And then we also talked about Drake this week, and you guys had a lot of questions about Drake and about how whether or not what the Instagram model did was illegal. But the fact of the matter is, whether or not what she did illegal doesn't matter under certain circumstances for which he could be liable. I don't ever foresee it turning into anything, and I hope it doesn't, based on the fact that she, I don't want to say asked for it, but potentially asked for what she got. Somebody said you play stupid games, you get stupid prizes. I don't think there's any more fitting statement to that than that Drake hot sauce story. So we can talk about any of those cases and more, whatever you guys are interested in. Go ahead and get in the comments now, because this is where I'm going to tell you. Thanks for joining. Again, my name is Peter Tragos, personal injury lawyer in Clearwater, Florida, that started this YouTube channel a little over a year ago to do stuff like this and really interact with the community on YouTube and talk about cases and answer questions, so that it's like we're sitting on a couch watching these cases together or discussing these cases together. We decided this year in 2022 to start doing a live every week on Friday afternoon around 4 o'clock, which is what this is. We're still struggling through picking a name. We got a lot of good options, but if you guys have any ideas for the names, please put them in the chat box or in the comments, because we want to pick a fun name that kind of talks about what it is that we do. And hopefully, if you're not subscribed to our page, you'll take a second and go subscribe to our page so you can be part of the Friday lives, get in the conversation, get in the comments, let us know what videos you're interested in, and make sure you like the lives while you're here, especially live and after, so that more people can see it and more people can come watch the live and get involved in the conversation, because I really like, what I like most is the interaction and answering the questions and things like that. So that's what we're doing here. We do it every Friday, and we're doing it today. So I'm going to scroll back up now in the comments, and we'll get to the comments and questions. All right. Barb, time to learn about how the legal system works? Yes. As Peggy, first live, glad you're here. It's wine 30. All right, finally attach your kitchen live. Loads of topics, yes. Sabrina Grant, this is a great question. At this point, is the Drake story true? So it kind of parallels the Antonio Brown and that Instagram model or whatever she is. It kind of mirrors that, except for the Antonio Brown one has like photos and text messages and all sorts of this proof. I haven't seen that yet from the Drake situation, so it could be totally false. But it's an interesting case with interesting legal ramifications if it is true. So it was something cool to talk about on the channel, and some people liked it. We do some one-offs sometimes just for fun and just to test out if people are interested in. And are there rules to determine punitive damages if Drake is guilty? For punitive damages, you have to prove things that are above and beyond, extra egregious, extra horrible. You don't just get punitive damages for doing something wrong. So I would say it would be unlikely that he would get punitive damages, but we'll see what actual facts come out, because like Sabrina asked, we don't really know what the true facts are with that case yet. What is the likelihood of Holmes getting restitution as part of her sentence? Would it be usual when found guilty of fraud? Yes. I would think that it would be likely that there's going to be some kind of restitution award for her, but we'll see if that conviction gets overturned. Pete actually just did a video today on the Holmes case. I don't know what that update is because I haven't watched it yet, so I don't even know what he talks about in it. So it's going to be a surprise for everyone. So make sure you check that out. We'll probably post it over the weekend or Monday at the latest. So yes, there will be more Holmes discussion here. Bob Hope, this is where I started calling you out for, and I was going to sue you from emotional distress. I think that's where we got the LOL from. All right, let's see here. So it sounds like everybody's happy in the UK that Prince Andrew was stripped of all of his royalty. Lawyer, how is Virginia Roberts allowed to file a complaint in the U.S. against Prince Andrew when she lived in Australia for the past 15 or 16 years? So this is something that I think might be litigated, but if you're a citizen here and you actually, even some people that are not U.S. citizens sometimes can file lawsuits here. So that's an interesting side conversation. But if the activity happened here, the actions happened here, you can file the case here, where the case and controversy happened. Bob Hope, yes, you have to actually lay out the allegations and what they are. Expat. Could Andrew still make a monetary offer once the trial has started? Would the trial be stopped? Just because he made a monetary offer wouldn't make the trial stop. If it was accepted and there was a settlement, yes, the trial would stop. You can make a monetary offer at any point. I like to say tons of our cases get settled at trial because that's when they bring some of the big offers. But just during trial or just when the jury is out is not the last opportunity to settle. After the verdict comes in, and we talked a little bit about this in the Kleiman v. Wright case, which was the Bitcoin case, even after a verdict, like there is in that case, tons of times, most of the time, I would say settlements happen. So more offers are made, more compromises are made, and settlements happen even after a verdict. So Ask Peggy and Jean Hood, both kind of saying it's kind of unfair to sue for something that happened 20 years ago. Is the statute of limitations an issue in Andrew's case? The way they got around that is the New York Civil or Child Victims Act, which came into play and basically eliminated the statute of limitations for these kind of cases for a limited period of time, which allowed people whose statutes may have run to file cases, and that's kind of what she's playing it under. And they already argued that's unconstitutional. It's been struck down. That it's been struck down. It makes it sound like it is unconstitutional. All the courts have said that it is, in fact, constitutional. So it shouldn't be a problem, but we'll see. It's Wine 30. Please do a quick update on the juror from the Maxwell trial influence the jury. I haven't seen any updates on this. I know there will be motions for new trial, motions for appeal. If they haven't already been filed, will be filed based on this juror. Hello from Massachusetts. Diana McGinnis, yes, we did talk about Prince Andrew's options now. For example, settle, do discovery, or get questioned but simply not answer. So yeah, I mean, the litigation process he's going to go through now is there's going to be written questions, interrogatories, and requests for production where he has to produce documents. Then his deposition will be taken, but he also has the right to depose other people and to subpoena things from the plaintiff and to force her to have her deposition taken and to get medical records from her and settlement documents potentially for other cases that she may have settled or other claims. Because I've heard that Virginia Roberts actually filed sexual abuse claims and sex trafficking claims prior to the Epstein stuff happening with a different defendant. I think I think my memory is serving me correctly. So that's going to all come into play as well when we talk about her credibility in this case. So there's going to be a lot to happen. He can't just simply not answer. He can be compelled to answer by the court unless he pleads the fifth, which potentially could happen as well. Do you think that because Virginia actually solicited girls to be involved in the scenario with Epstein and Maxwell, she holds no responsibility for subjecting them to what she had endured? So this is an interesting situation. So she is a victim turned into a perpetrator. So she would look back and point the finger back at Maxwell and Epstein. My guess is she was involved as a victim in the Maxwell case as well. She's got some kind of immunity, or they've told her that they're not going to prosecute her because she was in fact a victim. You don't often see that. Like when a child is abducted and abused and then they help get other children, you don't usually see them be prosecuted as well when they get basically brainwashed or beaten down into submission into becoming a perpetrator. Usually not. Ugly Kid Joe, does Ghislaine Maxwell scope to spill the beans and reduce her own sentence? It seems like the answer to that is no at this point. Hello, Kelly Ann. It's Wine 30, loving the Baldwin stuff. I find it really interesting, man. He's putting it all out there. I don't know why he's doing that, but I'll see if I can find some of those other interviews with other actors. It's really interesting to me what similarly situated actors are saying, like, no shot, dude, for lack of a better term, no pun intended. No shot with your argument. And I haven't seen anybody come out and defend him yet in the acting world. Rob Williamson, has Andrew so badly destroyed his credibility publicly? I don't sweat the picture with Virginia is fake. That he would be better to make a massive settlement offer. I mean, this is a case-by-case basis. You'd have to actually know what the facts were and talk to Prince Andrew for me to be able to advise him as an attorney as to whether or not he should make a big settlement offer. If I was him and there was smoke to this fire, I would have done it before everything was stripped and before the family backed off and the Queen was making statements about how I'm no longer doing this or that, or I'm not making public appearances, because I'm not going to say this for sure, but it's possible that other members of the royal family have had similar issues pop up in the past, and they go away quickly and quietly for large amounts of money with non-disclosure agreements and confidentiality agreements signed. So I would have done it way back then before it exploded in the public eye. JH is interested in Baldwin as well. As Peggy enjoyed the Nick Cage interview. Rob Williamson, what are the guts of the case about Baldwin? So the cinematographer was shot dead by a gun held by Alec Baldwin. Those are the facts I think everybody agrees on at this point. We don't know how live rounds got in there. We don't know if he pulled the trigger or not. He says he didn't. We don't know if he even should have been pointing it at her, pulling the hammer back, what exactly happened, how it happened, but he's admitted to certain things in a recorded interview for everyone to see that now we're being picked apart by other people and used by other people that are potential defendants in the case civilly and criminally, like the armorer, who are saying like, no, I didn't do this. No, I didn't do that. The assistant director shouldn't have given it to you. Why'd you take the gun from him? You still should have checked it. So there's a lot going on with what all happened. But the most interesting part is that Baldwin has spoken publicly about it in a recorded interview. And now it's being picked apart by other actors, by weapons experts, by lawyers. And it's not a good look for him. And he would have been better off probably just saying nothing. Expat. A glut of celebrity cases at the moment. Maybe OJ may come back. Hopefully not. But yes, I agree with you. There is a lot. What do you think about the Crumbly parents? So it's interesting because it does seem like there were a lot of red flags. And I want to keep criminal and civil separate. So if I was a plaintiff's lawyer representing the victims that were shot at the school, absolutely the parents have civil liability. I think the school absolutely has civil liability for what they knew and what they should have done but failed to do. And they fell short in their duty to these kids, to protect these kids. So civilly speaking, I think they have tons of liability. But criminally speaking, it's an interesting precedent to ensnare other people than the person that pulled the trigger or loaded the gun or told them what to do, right? If they would have told him, go do this, or planned it with him, or loaded the gun and given it to him and sent him off and say, this is your day, you've got to do it. Or even like the Baldwin case, they were in control of the gun, they loaded it, they handed it to Baldwin, knowing that Baldwin was going to pull the trigger in the scene, even though he wasn't necessarily supposed to pull the trigger in the scene. But, you know, for hypothetical sake, then I can understand how that other person, other than the person who pulled the trigger, could be criminally liable. But in this case, where their kid was acting out, he seemed to have some mental health issues. He seemed to be dangerous. He seemed to be showing signs. So what do parents have to do? If they would have put him in counseling, would that have been enough to not give them criminal liability? If they would have hidden the gun, but then he still went and found it, would that have been enough? If they would have taken him home from school, but he snuck out the window, went back to the school, would that have been enough? Where do we draw the line on what parents have to do to prevent things like this? Because bad people are going to do bad things. Mentally ill people are going to do things we don't understand. So I think that we have to be careful in who we're going to bring into this web as being criminally liable for what happened. Now, if they can prove that they joked around about this stuff, saw his plans, saw his drawings, did nothing about it, came to get him at the school and did nothing and were just criminally negligent, it seems like this is a specific case and hopefully not something that's just going to be widespread, even though I know a lot of people out there want it to be, even a lot of people that, you know, watch this page, and I appreciate the difference of opinion in the discussion. So let me know if you agree, if you are on the other side of this. But yeah, some people just want everybody involved to be prosecuted because we want less guns and we want less opportunity to have guns. We want less chances that this stuff happens. And the way to do that is throw everybody in jail that's involved in any shooting, even if they were just the one to purchase the gun, or even if they were just the one to accidentally leave their gun on the table, or whatever it may be, and somebody taking that gun and using it. So it is going to be really interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what precedent it sets. So I'm definitely going to follow that case. What's happening in Crumbley's now? Does their son need to go to trial first, or can their trials happen together? They're not going to happen together in one trial, but one does not necessarily have to happen before the other. I would say the son's trial or plea is going to happen before the parent's trial, but we'll keep following. It's really early on. We've just had arraignment. We're just talking bail. It's really early on in those cases. What's the downside and upside to Andrew settling before trial? The downside is, everybody at this point, if I told you Prince Andrew settled, Steve Shee, if I told you that Prince Andrew settled, what would you think that meant? That he rolled over, that he admitted it, that he did sexually batter her, that he was part of Epstein's scheme, that he is a slime ball, that he is a sex offender? Because that's what I think a lot of people would think at this point. Would you also think he's a liar and a sellout and everything he said wasn't true because now he's paying her after he totally denied the allegations? That's the downside. Is just looking bad in the public eye, and maybe the Queen and the royal family saying, yeah, no, thank you. If you're going to pay off victims of, that you sexually abused in the public eye, we want nothing to do with you. That's the downside. The upside is going to trial and having it proven that you are a sexually deviant abuser. And at this point, you can still say, I'm denying everything, but at this point, the monetary risk was too high. I had to mitigate that risk, so I felt like settling. You can still come out and publicly say that if you do settle, to still make you look like it's not true and still deny it. But if you don't settle and go to trial and a jury says, yes, you did this and you're liable, it's a lot harder to play innocent at that point. So that's kind of the analysis that defendants go through in these cases. New name, Legal Ease. Interesting. Thank you, Gail. Sue Nichols, Supreme Court decision regarding vaccine mandates. Can states now make vaccine mandates? So states actually have had this power for quite some time to make these vaccine mandates. The more interesting thing is, can they force private companies to mandate vaccines? And I think that the Supreme Court is going to make that difficult for them to do. But they definitely can still mandate vaccines in certain circumstances, yes. Spooky Boo, do you think Maxwell will walk next time around? No, I don't think so. Not if all the victims testify again, because we talked about it. Federal court, multiple victims is a recipe for a conviction. Even if there were these issues here, I still would bet on a conviction. JH, does Holmes's appeal happen or sentence happen first? We'll probably see motions for new trial and notices for appeal, but we'll see the sentence happen before she actually appeals. Usually, excuse me. Usually after the sentence is when the judge will say you have 30 days to appeal. Becky interested in the Crumbly case and also Prince Andrew. Those are two that are on the burner for us at this point. So this is interesting, new Chris. Always coming with good questions. Can a district attorney unilaterally instruct his office not to prosecute certain crimes because they don't feel that those crimes shouldn't be prosecuted? I mean, the law is the law. So we are the judicial branch as lawyers, and they are part of that judicial branch. And but they also have certain executive powers because they are executing the law, right? But it is not a district attorney's job to write the law. That's the legislature's job. So exactly what you're inferring in this question is right. If the law is the law, they have a duty to uphold the law. But in practicality, this absolutely happens. It's never going to be official where they say, I'm not going to prosecute this, but they absolutely decline to prosecute certain cases. It's more on a case-by-case basis because of surrounding circumstances, like what we just talked about. If a victim is turned into a perpetrator by brainwash and things like that, then a lot of times they will not prosecute that kind of case. Bob Gualtieri, our sheriff here in Pinellas County, actually did make statements like this. He's also a lawyer, which is interesting. He did make statements like this to his law enforcement officers with marijuana, basically saying, we're not prosecuting certain kind of possession of marijuana cases anymore. It's a waste of time and money, and we can't even prove whether or not the traces of marijuana are in certain things. So we're not going to waste our time, resources, and tax dollars on this. So I do find that interesting that this does happen, but it doesn't happen like in official capacity where they're just saying, okay, this crime, we're not prosecuting it anymore. Not quite to that level. All right, we've got a super chat. I'm going to hit now. All right, Forever Cuber. Do you think that the outcome of the Maxwell trial will affect in any way the discovery of the Prince Andrew lawsuit? So the outcome of it or the trial itself? Because the trial itself will absolutely affect the outcome of or the discovery in the Prince Andrew case, because they're going to use those statements made at trial. I think this might be one of the reasons Virginia Roberts did not testify in that Maxwell trial too, because it would be more ammunition to pick apart in these civil cases that she still has. And I think we don't know, I don't want to say how bad her testimony is going to be, but I think we don't know how much ammunition the defense attorneys have about her past for Virginia Roberts. We'll see, okay? Because I hate to, be part of or listen to or believe the mudslinging that goes on, especially with Dershowitz and her in the public eye. But I find it really interesting that she didn't testify, and we're going to see some of that. But absolutely, I think these other victims, what they said, what they found in Epstein's house, I think all of that could become part of the discovery process in this Prince Andrew case. I think the outcome, I think the outcome should scare him. That they're going to hold everybody involved accountable for what Epstein did and what everybody in that crew did. All right, another super chat here. Anne Marie, thank you for your time. Have a blessed weekend. You as well. Thank you for joining us. All right, let's scroll back up here through some of these. Diana, you are welcome. Okay, yeah. So Bob Hope, I didn't know what you meant with your question prior to this one. Do you have a take on the biker self-defense trial coming up? Does the guy have a legitimate legal argument for self-defense? I think this is the Edgecombe case. I think this case is really interesting. They didn't get a ton of eyes on our page, so we haven't really dedicated a ton of time towards it. So if you guys, more of you are interested in this Edgecombe case, which is the newest, most recent self-defense justified or not justified shooting where the biker shot the guy, road rage incident, guy gets out of his car. So I'll just give you the facts real quick. Biker pulls up next to the car. Car has to go around him. They say, what the heck? Biker pulls up, says, you talking to me? They say, yes. He punches him through an open window, then drives off. Car pulls up and gets out of the car to confront the biker. Biker shoots him. I find this really interesting because I think the biker's lawyers potentially are talking too much at this point before we get to trial. And they're saying things like the victim used the car as a deadly weapon and ran him off the road. But when you watch the video, to me, at least, to my eye, it does not look like he runs him off the road. It seems like the biker gets off the road far before the car pulls over to that lane. Then the guy gets out of the car, doesn't have any weapons or anything on him, and then he's shot, and then the biker runs away. So I don't think it's as strong as an argument for self-defense or for a justified shooting as some of the other cases, but I like to reserve a lot of my opinions until I see what comes out at trial. So once I see what comes out of trial, I'll have a better idea of whether he has a legitimate argument for self-defense. But I got to be honest, if you guys don't care about it, I'm probably not going to watch the trial. I don't just watch a ton of trials for fun. I try to handle my own cases and watch the trials that you all want to talk about in these kind of chats. Andrew Storm, Baldwin. Is he doing it himself or taking legal advice? I have no evidence of this, but I would be willing to bet a lot of money he has legal advice. Interesting. Marlene Brown says the armorer for the Rust movie is suing the movie's ammunition supplier for the fatal accident. Yeah, she has no choice. She's got to turn around and point the gun at everybody else now. Forever Cuber. What are your thoughts on the father-son duo who shot their neighbor over a mattress in a dumpster in Texas? So I have actually not seen this yet, but I will check it out. If you guys are interested in it, let me know. Get as many comments down below to check this case out, and I will. Usually over property, shooting is not justified, but it's Texas, so who knows? So Ken House, I'd really like to hear about how the sentencing process works in a future video. I'm astounded by the Holmes trial delay in this respect. So we have done like in-depth videos and podcasts on sentencing. Check out our podcast on Apple Podcasts, on SoundCloud, all the podcast spaces. Lawyer You Know is what the podcast is called. Look for the title Sentencing. I had Big George on, my dad, who's done more of this than anybody, break down exactly how this process works. I break it down for you now, but it takes forever to go through. And one of my good friends is a judge. He's a criminal judge, and he literally wrote the book on sentencing guidelines from where we are. So it is a really interesting process. You're right. Olivia saying about the Crumleys, I don't think most parents should be prosecuted, but it seems like they were all negligent. I don't know if they should have been given such harsh charges, but maybe lesser ones. Yeah, and we'll see. You know, the public at large is quick to condemn. UVA double Wahoo. Do you think it would be different if Alec Baldwin was more humble and likable? I think that always helps. I mean, I don't necessarily know that is he widely known as a jerk? I don't really know. I've never really thought that myself, but I think the more humble and likable you are, the better it is in every situation, including when you're getting sued or looking at potential criminal or civil charges. That does help. Rob Williamson, not really. Or it's on this side. Ping putter. I actually won that at a golf tournament. It's just my putter I use in my office for the green I have on the ground right behind me, little putting green. My Scotty Cameron's in my bag, and that's what I would recommend to everybody. And yeah, feel free to ask anything in this time. This is kind of like a not super serious time. This could be an AMA type thing in this live. That's why I'm starting to do it every Friday, so we can get a wider range of topics. You can ask me about law school, about college, about the court system, about anything you want, about me, about the law, about our firm, about cases we're covering, which is what most of the talk is. But feel free to ask anything at this point. Gene Hood, do you think Maxwell will get a new trial? How soon could the determination be? I do think she should have a new trial. I agree. I think she should have a new trial. I think she will have a new trial. There's no guarantees, obviously. And I don't know how quick it's going to happen. It's different in every case. Olivia G, I wish we could vote up your question. Am I missing a question? Oh, is this the question here? Is Chandler Halderson's defense team as bad as it seems to us noobs? I hate crushing public defenders or defense attorneys. I don't think they're doing a great job. I haven't been watching every second of it. I did read the indictment and I've listened to some of the testimony, and it doesn't seem like they're doing a great job, and it seems like a conviction is likely. They don't seem great. I'll leave it there. Seems like people are agreeing that the Crumbly parents are a bit overcharged, but they do agree that they do have some liability. Kayla Knox, it's important people forget context matters. Yes, it does. Peter Grimshaw, Prince Andrew will expose Clinton, Trump, Bill Gates, et cetera, to save his own skin. Seems like he, if anybody, would be the type of guy to just go after everyone. If he's going down, everybody's going with him. Ugly Kid Joe, if Balwani is found guilty, to what extent would that affect Holmes' sentence and vice versa? Probably wouldn't. You know, they could just be known as co-conspirators, and they could both get harsh sentences. They could both get easy sentences. I don't think one would necessarily affect the others. Now, if he's not guilty, I still don't think it would affect Holmes's verdict, because she is guilty of what she was charged with in the counts where they found her guilty, whether or not what anybody else did. So 2 wrongs don't make a right. Expat, yes, hit the like button, everybody, please, if you haven't already. And if you haven't subscribed to our page, go hit the subscribe button and hit the bell so you can be notified when the lives are like this, because it's only fun, in my opinion, I'm sure in yours, if you guys are asking questions. Marlene Brown, was Virginia the only one who got a settlement from Epstein? No. I think every single victim, even the ones that just testified about bad acts and not crimes, I think they all got settlements from the Epstein fund or from Epstein himself. Eric McDowell, I heard Maxwell's naming names of co-conspirators. Any truth to this? Not anywhere that I've seen. Carrie Adams says, I think if Maxwell was talking, it wouldn't be public. I tend to agree. Cover more Baldwin, please. Will do. Christy, love you, Peter. What are your thoughts on the mother of the newborn thrown away in the dumpster in New Mexico? I have not seen this. That's horrible. That's really horrible. I don't know what's going to, I don't know what's going to happen. You know, this Roe v. Wade discussion and the abortion discussion brings up cases like this because some people argue that why shouldn't you be able to throw away a newborn after you have it if you're allowed to have an abortion up until basically you have the baby? But I mean, it's a crime to kill a newborn. So the way it is, there are lines drawn in different lines drawn in different states, but in every state, if you kill your newborn, it's murder. Hopefully the chat will take interest in that trial. Yes. Diana McGinnis, how do you have time to be a lawyer and do all of this? Do you have a time generator? I don't, but what I do have is a calendar, and I stick to that calendar. I put everything in the calendar, and I schedule time to do this stuff. And I do a lot of it nights and weekends and stuff. I'll be researching and looking into these cases as well. But yeah, it's fun, you know, and it's a lot of crossover for me. And I think it keeps me sharp to watch these other trials in federal court and state court, some of them happening in Florida and all over. You know, it keeps me sharp on the rules of evidence, on cross-examination, on direct examination, on picking juries. We can learn a lot from watching other lawyers, and I like to sharpen my tools. And talking about it with you guys, to me, is fun and easy because I'm in it all the time. I'm not doing research for YouTube videos per se when I talk about what sentencing means or what an arraignment is or what the defense is doing on this motion to dismiss or what the settlement agreement looks like. I'm literally living it and doing it in my cases. So it's easy to talk about and it's fun to talk about. And I love to hear what people that could potentially be jurors for me on cases, what they think. And people may say like, oh, the people in this chat that hate PI lawyers or think everybody's slimy that files claims or don't think anybody should sue anybody at any point, or nobody thinks that you should give money for pain and suffering or for inconvenience. I want to know that because people like that exist. And if they get on my jury, it can affect the case. Because if the law says to do something, there are certain people that will disregard that law. And I know they exist, but I've got to find ways to talk about it with them, see if I can convince them otherwise, or get them off the jury. And so I like to learn from everybody what kinds of people think certain things and if they can be convinced. And it's really helpful for me too to make me a better lawyer. So I do actually think this YouTube stuff makes me a better lawyer, which is something I like about it. How many hours do you usually work each week? You got to define this. So I would say I'm never not working because my phone's always ringing with new cases or clients that need something, or doctors that have an issue, or vendors, or whatever it may be. So I'm always working, because also like where I get my hair cut or where I get my teeth, my dentist, sends me cases. So I'm always networking and talking with them. So honestly, it's like I'm always working, but I never miss my kids' sporting events. I never miss their awards chapel that's coming next week. My daughter got straight A's. I never miss their games, their performances, whatever it may be. I don't miss any of that stuff. And I'm blessed, and I'm grateful to have my own firm and be able to do stuff like that, because I realize not everybody can do that. It doesn't make you a bad parent if you can't do it. But it's hard for me to say how many hours I work a week, because I'm really never not working. But I always make time for family. I basically am working, playing golf, or hanging out with my family. And sometimes they cross over because my daughter and son sometimes play golf. So hard to answer that question for me, but I would say a lot. Mark Holiday, we've done a lot of videos on this, so I'm going to direct you to those other Holmes videos to check out exactly why Pete and I think Holmes will get a certain amount of time. Yeah, this seems to be Ali Abunama. This seems to be what everybody's thinking about the Halderson case. And I will tell you, so I posted on Twitter a couple days ago that, like it or not, knowing these cases are being streamed for everybody to watch is going to change the way lawyers do things, and hopefully make them step up their game, because there are so many unprepared and terrible lawyers out there. But you're also going to see some bad lawyering from time to time on cases that you watch. And there are more bad lawyers than you think. It's unfortunate but true. And then there's also this. Does he really have a defense? Thank you, David. So, Ugly Joe Kid, I don't think so. If the Balwani trial outcome doesn't affect Holmes' sentence, why did the prosecution ask for sentencing to be delayed? So Pete can talk more about, if you ask him on one of his videos and comment on it, if he thinks the Balwani conviction or not conviction will affect Holmes' sentence. I don't. I think sentencing's delayed just because sentencing always gets delayed. We pled a federal case 3 months ago, and I think it was kind of a simple sentencing. We just had the sentencing today, this morning. So sentencing gets delayed in tons of cases. It's not always because they're waiting for some other trial to happen. Name suggestions, Diana, and then leave me on the edge of my seat. Eric McDowell. No, so some of mine have been streamed, I think, but not saved. And then the criminal cases in our courthouse over in Pinellas, they're streamed on like closed circuit TV, so that all the people in the courtroom can watch, and like other prosecutors, I'll have friends up there texting me in a trial that I'm in. So they watch them that way. But no, there's none on YouTube or anything like that I'm aware of that you can see. I don't know how exciting you think they are. A lot of them are injury cases, some catastrophic surgical cases, car accidents, stuff like that. And then some of the criminal ones, especially some of the ones in federal court, are really interesting, but those aren't seen anywhere. Olivia G, great point. I used to think suing people was sleazy because of the famous McDonald's hot drink lawsuit, but then you find out she was actually burned and the water was way hotter than normal coffee and tea. Exactly. A headline, some lawyers like to do headlines like that, like fender bender bump, no damage done to the car, $500,000 settlement. To me, that sounds skeezy. It's like, really? $500,000 for that? But it's like rear end crushed, had to have neck surgery that costs $150,000, $500,000 settlement. And you can understand why you get $500,000 for that, because that person had to have a neck surgery that's going to affect them for the rest of their life, everything they do, because this person was on their cell phone or not paying attention or whatever it may be and smashed into the back of their car. So it's all context. And I've never been one to try to like embellish or make it seem like, oh, this is nothing case we got $5 million for, because I do agree with you. It sounds sleazy, but when you have real facts and people were really hurt, then you understand why they have to file claims, because they can't afford that surgery on their own or whatever it may be. Thank you, Emily. So Forever Cuber, yes, Casey Anthony, I did watch some of this trial. I think she was not guilty purely because the state did not uphold its burden. They did not prove beyond a reasonable doubt. I don't think there was anything amazing that happened or some legal mastermind or legal maneuvering that happened in her case. I think purely the state did not prove its case. Ken House, YouTube and smart channels like yours have been a savior to my mental health during the pandemic. I thank you kindly for your work. I appreciate that. I appreciate you, because some of the YouTube videos I watch, same exact thing. Mine was geared towards, yeah, exactly. When I got sick of the news, watching stuff like people that actually are educated on certain aspects of the news. Like, I'm not going to comment on everything in the news. I'm not going to comment on stuff I have no clue what's happening. Like, I'm not going to comment on the science of the vaccine or the pandemic, stuff like that. But yeah, I agree with that. And then with sports, I really found YouTube and started watching it for golf and stuff that was happening for live sports on YouTube during the pandemic when there were no live sports. So I appreciate that, Ken. Kayla Knox, yeah, most people like lawyers, professors, scientists eat, sleep, and breathe work while being with their friends and family. True. All right, let's see. Kevin Lindsay, would subscribing to The Lawyer You Know get us out of jury duty for a trial you're involved in? That's really interesting. And the answer is yes and no. So the first answer is no. You would not be struck by cause as a cause challenge just because you subscribe to or watched a video of my YouTube channel. Unless you say that I'm going to vote in favor for whatever way Peter Tragos' client is, no matter what anybody else says, no matter what the facts of the case are. I can't be fair and unbiased. I just have to vote in his favor, which I would never ask you to do. I wouldn't want you to do. I would just want you to be a fair juror and bring whatever you bring to the table as a juror. So don't do that on my account. I'm never asking for that. I don't want you to do that. If you said that, you'd be struck for cause. But if you said you could be fair and impartial, you're not going to get struck for cause. But if the other lawyer thinks that you would lean my way, they probably would strike you for with a preemptive challenge. But who knows? No guarantees. You absolutely could legally get on my jury, which would be amazing and awesome. And I'd love to hear what would be the best about it is after the trial, I'd love to hear your feedback and what you say about how we tried the case in our presentation. If it was too strong, too weak, if you liked the presentation software that we used or what we did, you know. So I love talking to jurors about stuff like that. In some cases I have been able to, in others I haven't. Kyle P, maybe you could give some insight to this. I was in a car versus deer accident a while ago, and afterwards I got a letter from a lawyer. Can I sue a deer? So no, you can't sue a deer. But what you can do is in most states like Florida, you have underinsured or uninsured motorist coverage. And in certain circumstances, if something happens that is not your fault to cause an accident, then you can recover from your own uninsured motorist coverage. So because the deer doesn't have insurance, you could potentially have a claim if you were injured. Now, your own insurance is going to cover your car if you have that insurance anyways, but for your injuries, your bodily injury coverage only covers people you hurt. But if you have that extra layer of underinsured motorist coverage, then you could potentially collect from injuries that occurred from an accident that was not your fault. And that's the key. It has to not be your fault. And this is not legal advice. Speaking specifically about your case, I'm giving hypotheticals and generalities. If you want any specific legal advice about your case, you can reach out to me directly. And I've talked to a lot of people on this channel I've talked to directly. And I've worked on their cases. I've connected them with other lawyers in other states and stayed connected on their case. So if you have specific questions about your cases, reach out to us. The lawyer you know, or it's lawyeryouKnow@gmail.com. My phone number, my personal email address. Our website is tragoslaw.com. Look us up, find us through there, and we put it all in all of the info stuff with all these videos, so you can always find that. All right. All right, name suggestions. It's law and it's live. Don't hate that. Don't hate that at all. Live and let law. Lawyer right now. Good suggestions. Let's see what else. So CLEs, thanks for your interesting analysis. This is far-fetched, but do any of the Maxwell jurors have legal recourse versus the juror who ruined it for them, waste their time and energy? No, not likely. David Tran, silly question. Thinking of the Wordle game, how soon should developers protect their IP before releasing their work for public consumption? As soon as I had something I knew was real, I would get an intellectual property attorney involved and follow their guidance. Most of the time, you want the lawyers involved earlier than you think. W. Joseph, lawyer you know, Slam Dunkers Live, or Tragos Live affiliates, or lawyer you know, buddies. Interesting. Kayla Knox, I used to hate suing people, but then I had a then I had homelessness happen to me after an apartment fire, and I realized how many people take advantage of a lawsuit. You have no idea how many people I come into contact with. We have multiple cases right now where nobody's cared about these people their whole lives, and they get into these circumstances they can't get out of, and stuff happens to them, and people literally look at them like, well, and it's like, if this happened to somebody else, you would be appalled, but because it happened to this person, you don't care. And that's why it's great working on contingency, because they don't have to pay me out of pocket. I make the person who did it to them pay me. I love it. That is my favorite part about what I do, is going and getting it from the person that should pay for everything. Okay, it's wine 30. The baby didn't die. It was found in the dumpster by the dumpster divers. Okay. Attempted murder. Okay. Like I said, I didn't see what's going on with that case. Forever Cuber, one of the issues with being in a car accident, though, is the symptoms can take years to develop, and then you have a hard time linking them to the accident. I don't know if I agree about years. It can happen where years to develop, but most of the time, absolutely, your adrenaline can be pumping for hours, days, months, whatever it may be after your adrenaline's not pumping for months, but for a period of time after the accident, and then you don't realize how bad the pain is, especially if it's neck or back, spine pain or muscle pain. You don't realize how bad it is till years later. Absolutely. And we have to deal with, defense attorneys and insurance companies think if you don't go to the ER immediately, then you couldn't have possibly been hurt in the car accident. And they try to use that and make us look scuzzy and schemy to juries. But in reality, juries understand that. And we have the duty and a job to make jurors understand that with the help of doctors that say, absolutely, this stuff, these symptoms can take time to develop. And it's just part of our job to prove what injuries are connected to the car accident. Sometimes it's harder than others to prove, but we absolutely have proved injuries that did not show themselves immediately after the car accident are connected to the car accident to a reasonable degree of medical probability, which is the standard we have to prove it by, and by preponderance of the evidence. Expat, is there much burnout among lawyers due to all the bad stuff they deal with? Doctors turn to alcohol, apparently. I think every profession turns to alcohol and drugs unnecessarily for stuff like this. So I don't think it's just one more than the other, but there is a ton of burnout. There are a ton of lawyers that hate their jobs. A lot of them fall into certain jobs where they're a slave to the clock and to billing hourly. And I can understand why they hate it. So I understand why that happens, but I mean, I love it. And I think that if you are a lawyer, you can find things to do with that legal degree. There are some lawyers that go into finance or become mediators or end up trying to be judges, and you can do different things with your law degree. If you start to feel that burnout, which is why I think it's a good degree to have, because it gives you a a wide range of opportunities. Grant Uber, no, I would never consider becoming a judge. And I have lots of reasons for that we can discuss maybe on another live video when we're not over an hour into it. I've got about maybe 10 minutes left, but I've appreciated and loved all the questions so far. Olivia G, what qualifications do paralegals need and what do they do in their day-to-day? So paralegals don't necessarily have to have a certain degree or certificate. It's good if they do. There are degrees in paralegal studies, and there's a paralegal certificate. You can be a Florida registered paralegal here in Florida and take continuing education classes and things like that. Really what they need to be good at doing is word processing, is taking direction, is being in and able to complete tasks, being good time managers, being structured, being organized. Those are all the best things because being a paralegal can be really different from firm to firm. But as long as you can learn how to work with the attorney, that's what it is, paralegal, like paramedic, you come alongside the attorney. We just look for intelligent people that are able to multitask and that are able to be organized and structured and use our systems in place and take direction and be able to deal with a fast pace and deal with a lot of alphas and type A's that are, this hand motion kind of describes me. I use this to describe me a lot. So yeah, that's the kind of paralegal. And I've had my paralegal for a long time now, and she's amazing. She's got a ton more experience than I do. She's been doing it for 30 years, and I'd be lost without her. But yeah, I mean, really, there's not one specific thing, but that's kind of how I would describe paralegal. And day to day, they can be answering calls, doing intakes, drafting pleadings, drafting demands, ordering medical records, looking at settlement statements, emailing a million times back and forth with me, setting up depositions and scheduling them, filing documents. I mean, it can be a wide array of things that they do. It really depends on what kind of paralegal. KDJ, solo practitioner here. Awesome. I really appreciate your views on things, especially appreciate Big George sharing his wisdom and experience. They don't make him like him anymore. Can't really have his resume and his experience anymore. So I love sharing that when he has time to come on. I appreciate you following along with us. Do you think James and Jennifer Crumbly will actually continue to sort of reach to blame the parents? I think they are going to either get convicted or take some plea because of how horrible it was. I think if it might have been some drive-by shooting or drug deal shooting, probably not. But because of the facts surrounding this shooting, I think it's more likely that they do. But I really think it's interesting to follow that case. And that's why I do want to follow that case legally speaking. Kayla Knox, the FLSA, the Fair Labor Standards Act, protects at least minimum wage and what you agreed to be paid on. So you could have a good case there, and there are statutory fees and costs with that. So you may. So could have a case there. W. Joseph, loved Big George too. KDJ. Grant Uber, what insurance companies would you say are the scummiest? I'm not going to say scummiest on this video, but there are some that are worse than others. And I've actually talked about doing a video on that. But most of the time right now, State Farm, Geico, I mean, the General and insurance companies like that, usually the General and what's the other one? That don't even write policies. So if somebody has the General, we know they're not going to have a policy that's going to cover anything. But yeah, State Farm and Geico are some of the ones that just are unreasonable is what I'll say. What I have is USAA, and while there's no great insurance company, in my opinion, they're never just going to pay you what you deserve. You always have to fight. If an insurance company is offering it to you without a lawyer, you deserve more than that. It's just a fact because they are not doing things the way that they should. But USAA is probably my favorite. And then Travelers is decent. But, it all depends on the adjuster you get sometimes too, even within the insurance companies. Forever Cuber, I need a lawyer in Montreal, specifically one that deals in labor law and contract. Any suggestions? Yeah, shoot me an email. We do know some there. And especially Pete Sardis has some contacts up in Canada. So yeah, shoot us an email. Grant Uber, have you ever been sued personally or your law firm? Not me personally. Our law firm has been sued in a very interesting criminal case for a defendant that actually I probably can't share any details of it. But yes, we have, and it resolved nicely for us, I'll say. Kyle P, it's literally what I'm here for. Let's answer some questions. Ooh, interesting Virginia Costello name. Multiple sentences. That is interesting. Grant, 99% of my cases are contingency. Yep. All of our injury cases are contingency. Nobody pays us anything out of pocket. It's all contingent and a percentage of the settlement. Kara Linehan, found your channel while bored and off work after someone injured me. Is this irony? Or it's the algorithm doing its job, right? I don't know. Who knows? Hey, KB, hit the like. This channel is awesome. Provides excellent legal analysis. Thank you. Yeah, I see some people commenting like Kayla and Forever Cuber about certain classes in college and law school. We did a whole thing, a whole podcast with me, my dad, and Pete about how we could fix law school. And it all surrounds practical knowledge. That's what we need in higher education today. Thank you, Odd Greenbody. Thumbs up, like the video. Thank you, Eric. I see everybody saying the baby did survive. Good, that's good. We have 4 lawyers at our office right now and a law clerk, and 3 of us are partners. A good paralegal has great listening skills and patience. I forgot to mention patience. Monica T, don't do that, but thank you. And call for anything you need. Seriously, anything you need, call. Hey, KB, thank you. Legally live stream law theme. Team USAA, other USAA people in here. All right, Grumpy Cat, why would Elizabeth Holmes sentencing be pushed out to September? I really want to encourage you to go watch our Elizabeth Holmes verdict discussion with Pete and I. We did a live, and I think we did 15 minutes on this, discussing exactly why this stuff gets pushed out. But I'm going to take Diana's advice here. Thanks for this. Now go spend some time with your kids and my wife, and I will. Thank you, everybody, for joining in here. We went an hour and 20 minutes. I usually try to keep it around an hour, but I appreciate all of the questions. I appreciate everybody being here. Make sure you hit the like button if you haven't already and subscribe to our page because we're going to keep doing this every Friday. I am hoping to have a name by next Friday. And then we're going to there may be some other things in the working once we have a name here. Do you have some favorite quotes that we use on the channel? Let me know in the chat because we have some stuff coming. It's going to be fun. We're trying to have a lot of fun with this in 2022. We appreciate all you guys coming along for the ride with us. But for now, it's Friday. We're live, and that's all we got. So thanks for being with us.